Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with host Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara.
Good to have you back. Thank you again to our patrons who helped make this podcast happen. We just got a new patron today, and we're really thrilled about that. Every time we get a new patron, we get excited. And we love our patrons. So if you believe in this podcast, if you want to support this podcast and help make it better, if you want really awesome rewards, go check out patreon.com/speakingout. And you can look at all the different tiers and the different rewards and help support us. This week's podcast, this week's question, where are the pedophiles since COVID-19? What happened to them?
Right.
So this one is especially painful for us because I can tell you over the last few weeks, my workload has increased dramatically. Just this morning, I was on the phone with somebody at Homeland Security. I've been talking to friends. I've been talking to people who are flooding my inbox with requests for help. It is absolutely unbearable.
I think
how bad this is.
It is, Jimmy, and I think a lot of people don't understand it because we are all consumed with the issues of, keeping ourselves safe, our family safe from COVID. COVID has become the primary issue right now. And
employment. Everything related to that.
Everything
employment,
related, yes. More and more of us are beginning to know people who are getting this virus, and somehow we've allowed the child abuse and what's happening in that arena to be sifted down below.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing. So we are going to bring it up to the top where it belongs. It is a painful thing to talk about, but it is a necessary thing.
So that's the question. That's the whole thrust of this episode. Where did they go? Where did the pedophiles go? And we wanted to start by talking about where they are not, because obviously they're no longer at the schools.
Right.
The teachers that were pedophiles, and there are a lot of them. It's staggering how many are school teachers or are on school staff. They're not in the schools right now because kids aren't in schools.
And they're not in a lot of our churches because a lot of our churches are not back in operation yet. A lot of churches have gone completely online for a while yet. So whereas the church used to be the pedophiles' playground, not the playground is closed for a while.
Daycares, the numbers are extremely limited for the daycares that are back.
Right.
A lot of daycares still aren't meeting.
Exactly.
And the ones that are, their numbers are very limited.
Right.
My wife works at a daycare. She's assistant director. And their numbers are way down.
Sure.
Way down.
Yeah. And things like our lakes and our parks and our recreation centers and everything like that, where pedophiles would normally hang out to meet children, even malls and shopping centers, those are very limited and or closed right now.
Yeah.
So, public pools around here are closed.
Sports events for schools have mostly been canceled or banned or whatever terminology you want to use now. Kids are not at these events.
No.
So it begs the question, where are they? Keep in mind, too, the very frightening thing is that kids are spending a lot of time online.
Right.
Schools are moving a lot of their curriculum online. Our school now, our school district specifically has the option in the fall. Us parents can keep our kids home if we want. And a lot of parents are going to opt for that.
Well, a lot of schools are mandatory.
A lot of schools are
mandating
that their kids stay home.
At least for the beginning of the school year. So there is no choice there.
Yeah. So a lot of them are stuck at home. A lot of the kids are online. Keep in mind too, a lot of the parents still have to go to work. And they can't find sitters for their kids. Right. So what becomes their babysitter? And I know personally a lot of people who've spoken with me directly and said, we know it's not right, and we know we shouldn't do it, but we don't see any other option. We don't have any other options right now. And we just give devices to our kids and we let them play while we're at work, and they stay home alone and they play on their devices, and we have no idea what they're up to. But that's where they're at. Excuse me. So I want to read this quote. I just put this on my Facebook page yesterday. This quote is from John Sheehan. I think that's how you pronounce it. Shehan. He's the vice president of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And he's specifically in the Exploited Children Division. Here's what he has to say. COVID-19 has presented challenges and opportunities in the fight against child sexual exploitation. In the first quarter of 2020, NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, became aware of predators openly discussing the pandemic as an opportunity to entice unsupervised children into producing sexually explicit material. At the same time, we experienced an explosion in reporting to our cyber tip line from both the public and electronic service providers, all while transitioning to a telework environment. I want to pause there. This is the biggest recipe for disaster.
It is.
Basically, if I can boil down what he's saying here, he's saying that every imaginable worst case scenario is happening right now. So kids are parked at home. Abusers are openly talking about exploiting children. They're not even hiding it anymore, because we have cities right now that are burning their police stations down to the ground. Law enforcement is they've always been stretched way too thin. Right. Have any of you ever reported abuse before? You know what I'm talking about, right? You wait and you wait and wait, and then all of a sudden it comes back. Guess what? Oh, it's unfounded. Right. We find no evidence of abuse. I have hand-delivered file folders to law enforcement before, and they've come back and said, it's unfounded. Translation, our department is way overbooked, and unless there's a bleeding kid laying in the street with with their head decapitated, we're not going to help you, or we can't help you. We don't have the manpower. So that's what's going on right now. And this guy's saying, remember we talked about how the cases of abuse, the number of people reporting has decreased dramatically because of COVID. Right. What's interesting about this is that the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, those numbers have increased dramatically. Right. And it's not the public who's doing it. I'm going to read a quote here in a second.
I think this is important, what you're going to read in that quote.
Yeah.
And I want people to really grasp what is going on here.
So I want to continue this quote from John Sheehan. He says, I couldn't be more proud of the staff at NCMEC for demonstrating their ability to adapt and respond during this time while always maintaining their commitment to the children we serve. Our teams used the unique challenge that COVID-19 presented and focused on the opportunity to creatively improve workflows. That's the nice way of saying it's incredibly hard to shift everything that we're doing to the telephone.
Yeah.
It's all online. Their offices are closed.
Right.
That's the reality. Right. These people are working from home. Counselors are working from home. I talked to a friend of mine who's a therapist. For months, she's been working at home, having conferences or sessions online with clients. Well, guess what? The kids aren't forced to do these sessions.
Right.
And so the parents opt to not do them online because it's just, it's ineffective and it's awkward and it's hard. So that's the translation here. Okay. So it's an uphill battle every which way you look at this. He says both operational and technical, they identify new methods to assist in removing online child sexual abuse material and support the rescue of children from sexually abusive situations. Here's the next quote from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children's website. In 2019, this was pre-COVID, in 2019, the cyber tip line received more than 16.9 million reports. Wrap your head around that for a second. 17 million reports. Most of which related to, and the site breaks it down to these 5 bullet points. Most of the 17 million reports that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received in 2019, most of them were for this: apparent child sexual abuse material, online enticement, including sextortion, child sex trafficking, child sexual molestation. I think I said 5. Those are 4. The top four all related to sexual abuse and exploitation of minor children. The 4 top out of 17 million reports. Wrap your mind around that. And listen to this. 150,667 of those reports, a fraction out of 17 million reports, only 150,000 were from the public, and 16.9 million were from electronic service providers. This ought to make us not sleep at night. Not to scare you, but we've got to wrap our heads around how
scary.
prevalent this
it's
is.
Frightening.
The online extortion of children.
It's frightening. Yes.
By the way, you want to know how many kids go missing each year just in the United States? 800,000. 800,000 kids are reported missing every single year in the United States. That is astounding. Those are new cases, by the way. Those are not long-term, the ones that they never find. That's 800,000 new children show up missing every year in the United States. This ought to be on the very front of our radar. It ought to be top and center of everything that we're talking about, everything that we put our money into. Instead, we're starving these advocacy departments, these programs, starving them financially. And it I don't know. It's so frustrating.
I'm not sure. I think, Jimmy, what happens is when something becomes this huge and this big, is so overwhelming that people shut down. And that happens a lot. People just throw their hands up and say it's too big.
Yeah.
Can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Can't think about it. Can't go there in my mind. It's just too much. And I think we're seeing that happening right now. We truly are. It's people feel helpless. How can I help these children?
Or it's not on their radar because everything else is.
Or, every second that you go on social media, pick up a newspaper, listen to a radio, is something about COVID.
And typically it's mask versus no mask, which, I mean, great if you want to talk about that, if you want to debate about that. But I promise you right now, statistically, masks is not our epidemic.
Right.
I'm all for wearing, when I go in stores, I put my mask on. I'm not one of these people that's like, I have my rights.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Whatever. Be smart. Be wise. But move on to other important issues and start talking about them. This is going on right now. So the question that we asked earlier, where are the pedophiles? Well, I can tell you again, they've not gone into hiding.
Nope.
They're now out in the open.
Yep.
They know that our law enforcement, where are they at right now? Where are they at?
Our law enforcement is shameful to say.
They're out in the streets fighting riots.
Done to them. Yes.
They're out in the streets.
They are, and it's awful.
Trying to push back riots and keep people from killing each other.
And keep cities from being burned down. And,
right.
Yeah, every monument being smashed, every race, color, and creed being just attacked. That's where they are.
Yeah.
This isn't
abuse
priority.
Isn't even on their it's not even on their radar right now.
How can it be?
And I can tell you this too. In my phone call to Department of Homeland Security, I was told you ought to see what's happening with our legal system. And by the way, if you missed episode 100 with Buzz Chavijan, go back and listen to it. Listen what's going on to our legal system right now.
Right.
He said 90+ % of their cases, of their court cases, are all on monitors.
Right.
They're not even showing up to the courthouse. And he said, some of these cases, they're so important that you have to be there in person. Think about that too. Think about the implications of this. All the cases that are getting lost in the shuffle, that are just being rubber stamped because our whole system is so overburdened right now. Our system
is broken right now. It's overwhelmed. It's overburdened. It's broken.
And abusers know it.
And they do. I was talking to someone who just got out of jail, and he was mocking our legal system locally here. He said, I'm supposed to be on parole. And he said, what a joke that is. He said, I've had nobody check on me for 4 months.
Yep.
And he said, I finally called him and said, hey, I want to go out of state. Am I okay to go out of state? You know what the response was? Just shoot me a text. I love this. Shoot me a text and tell me you're okay.
Yeah.
And I thought,
well, it's interesting you mentioned the prisons, because I can tell you where pedophiles are not. They're no longer in our prisons.
Right.
They're turning them out in droves. And if you don't believe me, look it up. You can find plenty of articles on this.
Sick about it.
Violent predators. Now they claim, excuse me, they claim that the only inmates that they're turning out are nonviolent, people that we're going to get out in 6 months anyway, et cetera, et cetera. Nonsense.
I know.
You can find plenty of articles that show.
That.
And Pennsylvania's been doing this for a while, and you know that from living here.
I do know that.
Our lovely governor has been turning prisoners out, and he has I guess he has a fascination for pedophiles, because they're turning. Well, I shouldn't say him. It's just our legal system, because it's not specifically our governor. But he's certainly aware of this, and he's not said a whisper about it. Very aware. But in Pennsylvania, in 2018, if you don't believe me, look it up. Maybe I'll link to all these articles when we're done. 2018, Pennsylvania rammed through in the quiet of the night this legislation that said, we're removing tens of thousands of registered sex offenders from the registry because we found it unconstitutional. Because you got to worry about the feelings of people who rape kids. We find it unconstitutional that we retroactively went back and labeled these abusers and used these guidelines for the different tiers and things like that. And we put them on the sex offender registry for life. So you know what they did with it? They removed tens of thousands of sex offenders, just vanished instantly. Overnight, vanished from the registry.
This was brought up locally in my little town of Shanksville. It happened to 3 sex offenders.
There's an SVP, sexually violent predator, tier 3. That's the one that the state police knock on every single door within 1 mile radius of where that sex offender takes up residency. Once they get released from prison, and they hang posters, they notify every daycare, they notify every school. We all get posters, everybody within a 1 mile radius. You want to know what happened to him? He lives, I can see him from my office at the church building. You know what happened to him? Off the registry. Instantly. Taken off the registry. He's still there.
Not made up what we're talking about. This is
not
real
at all
stuff happening in real time, our time, and we have real children, countless numbers of them being abused.
Yeah.
It's epidemic and beyond. I would say it's beyond. It's, if there ever should be labeled a pandemic, is child abuse.
Yeah.
It truly.
Yeah. So
truly
they're releasing pedophiles from prisons like crazy in all 50 states. Trust me when I say this is happening. They're not in the schools because schools are closed. They're a lot of them not in churches because churches are not meeting in person
like they used to.
So the pedophiles aren't sitting at home like, oh shucks, now we can't abuse kids, right? They know that law enforcement is completely overwhelmed. Our court system's completely overwhelmed. They're blatantly talking about how they can exploit children online, and they're doing it. We know that because why? The reports are way up.
Right.
Which reminds me, here's another article. This was from Forbes.com. The name of this article, which was a few months ago. This is right in the middle of COVID, April 24th. Yeah. Child exploitation complaints rise 106% to hit 2 million in just 1 month. 2 million reports in just 1 month. That's just child exploitation online. If you don't think these abusers are emboldened, if you don't think that they're doing this out in the open, if you don't think that they're finding ways into your child's device, think again, because they're doing it. So, where are they? Well, a lot of them, they're online and they're at home.
Absolutely.
They're at home.
And they're your neighbor or they're your good friend, they're whatever, who is saying, you know what, I'll help you out. I'll babysit your kid.
Yeah.
I don't even want money. I'll help you through this.
That's right.
I'll go sit with your kids for, the next 5 hours every day. I don't want anything from you. Beware, parents. I really, really, really mean that.
Yes.
Beware of something like that happening to you.
And you mentioned too, a lot of the parents are so desperate because they have to work.
Right.
Or they get fired. Or they lose their house. They need to pay the bills.
Unemployment's running out. They need money.
Daycares are not taking kids.
No.
Just one of our sister daycares. My wife works at a chain of daycares. It's a nonprofit organization. They just shut down one of their centers just north of here for 14 days.
Yeah.
Because
if one child or one staff member
somebody
gets
tested
COVID,
positive for COVID,
they have to. It's a mandatory shutdown. What do parents do with that when they have to? They have to work. They have to. Either the child is left totally alone at any age, and we see that's happening also. And then they have their devices, and guess what? A lot of school budgets, which are in place now, have put budgetary money in there to include devices for every child.
Yeah.
Every child.
They're buying computers for every child to accommodate, which is, it's good that they're providing education.
We can say it's good, Jimmy, but the drawbacks are so terrible that I don't know. It's not good. Teachers can no longer check on the students. Nope. They no longer have that personal interaction with the student. Isolation, you feel it's non-personal.
Yeah.
Very non-personal when you're doing anything like that over line. Can you imagine 6-7 hours of schooling for a child daily without any interaction?
And I can tell you from my own children, my children are desperate to see their friends.
They are.
Desperate to see their friends.
All children are.
They are
dying.
Desperate
to
see their friends.
Just to be a kid and play with their kids and talk to their friends.
And so
guess
see
who's teachers.
So guess who's going to sweep in there and be the superhero who now all of a sudden, and children don't care.
No.
I shouldn't say that.
Children can't differentiate.
Don't know.
How would they know?
When they see somebody being friendly.
Mr. John paying attention to me, as you know. Mr. John cares about me, or Mr. whoever it is. Yeah. Steps in and becomes the substitute parent.
Yeah. So, the irony is that the one place that should be a sanctuary for kids has become a hellhole. It's a place of nightmares. So the home, the home,
so many children,
kids who are stuck at home with abusive parents and kids who are stuck at home who don't have abusive parents, but they're being exploited online.
Right.
These numbers are going up and up and up and up and up like crazy.
And I don't care what parent is out there. I was very naive when I was a young parent, not so naive as I became older and more aware about a child's curiosity. A child is going to explore. If they come across a video or a link that looks kind of, wow, I've never seen that before, they will explore.
Kids are naturally curious.
Yes.
In every aspect of life.
That's not a fault of any parent. That's simply the brain of a child.
That's right.
That's how it's not developed enough to say, nope, I can't go there. That's not good. And you can say, well, you should have security put on your device. Those securities, you think that pedophiles and abusers aren't working very hard to overcome those securities? They are. They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. You can think you have the tightest security. Go ask anybody who works with these devices. They'll tell you there's nothing as a totally safe device.
Yeah.
There's not.
So what do we do about it? How do we protect our kids? Right. This ought to be of utmost importance to all of us who are parents, grandparents, caretakers. Number one, we've got to use our eyes and our ears now more than ever before. Our kids are sitting ducks, whether we like it or not. You can say that I'm being overreactive. You can say that I'm exaggerating. But one thing that I will never do is use emotion over statistics. Statistics are important. And the statistics right now are showing kids are being exploited online in record numbers. That's fact. That is an absolute fact.
We can't deny that.
We've got to be paying attention. We've got to be checking our kids' devices. We've got to make our kids use their devices in open spaces. If you're away at work for 8 hours, don't park your kid in front of a device unmonitored. That's just not, don't do it. Number two, report anything that seems off. Don't be afraid to say anything. Stop this nonsense of people telling you, well, you're just being too gossipy or you're being too overprotective. So what? If people say that about you, who cares? They're losers. Ignore them. Ignore them. And do what's in the best interest of your kid.
And
what's best for your kid.
Other parents, if there's somebody going around begging to watch children and you feel something's not right, you don't have to have hard proof at that point.
Right.
If you just feel it in your gut, this is just not right.
Right.
Share that with other parents in your neighborhood, please.
If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
It probably is not. Correct. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get your kids to check on other children. Have them check up on their friends. Have them check in and ask. Give them a set of questions to ask. Not probing questions, but just, how's it going?
Simple things like, what did you have for lunch today? Are the children eating? Are they eating?
And have your kids identify if it seems like their friends are really depressed or really off.
Yes.
Like your kids know.
They're
smart.
Get to talk to any of our friends today? Have you been anywhere today? All of those things, or sometimes kids will just say, well, I broke my arm. Well, how'd you break your arm? Or I broke my toe. I had a child tell me a couple years ago, my arm broke in 2 places. How? I don't know. I was playing. Well, come to find out, the father was involved in that breaking of that arm. We need to do these checkups with children, really.
Yeah,
and truly.
Absolutely.
We do.
Create a list of resources to help family through the pandemic. Give numbers to counselors, give numbers to hotlines for depression and suicide.
I believe every child should have a safe number to call too. And I don't know, I honestly don't know if schools are providing that, but I believe before every session that they do of this virtual online schooling, there should be some kind of a number where they can get in a call if they're being, if there's anything they need. I know it would have to be worded properly, but for food, shelter, safety, there
should be code words.
Yes.
I think of the lady who called 911 and she was ordering a pizza.
Right.
And the dispatcher said, I think you have the wrong number. And she said, no, I don't.
Yes.
And he goes, oh, I gotcha. And he picked up on it right away.
Now, is a young child going to know that? No.
Not unless they're taught.
Right. Unless they're taught. Every home is not going to teach that. But those of us who can, please do that. Others try to pick up on, and there should be a number supplied, even if you give that child your number, if you are the safe person for them.
Yeah. Finally, work with your advocacy centers in your town.
Right.
Talk to them. Talk to your law enforcement. Talk to any advocacy center that provides care for children or domestic abuse victims. Talk to them and ask how you can help.
That's
ask how you can partner with them. They're more than happy. Trust me.
What you can do. What can you do locally? What is something? Everybody can find one thing to do. I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah.
I truly do. But we have to ask. We have to seek.
Yeah.
We have to be active in this. Yeah.
So anyway, the answer is the pedophiles are all around us, and they're brazen. They're getting energized by the COVID lockdowns. They're going online like never before. They're openly talking about exploiting children.
Playday? Are you kidding me?
They're being turned out of prisons like crazy.
Yes.
The ones that were using the churches as the playground, they're finding other places now to use as their playground. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, churches aren't meeting in person. Now kids are safe. No. Wrong answer. These people will find anywhere where they can exploit children, and they'll use any means possible to exploit them. It's what they do. It's who they are. Right. They're all around us, and we just need to be really vigilant. We need to listen to each other. We need to be aware of what our kids are doing, how they're behaving, how they're responding, changes in behavioral patterns. We need to be really aware and not just write that stuff off and be like, well, they're probably just sad because of COVID. Ask specific questions.
Right.
Know what your children and grandchildren are doing.
Right.
Know what they're up to. Pick up their devices and go in their history and look at what they've been frequenting. And don't be afraid to do it. You're the parent.
Because of it. They're kids. You have to work with them.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children does not recommend, taking devices away from children as a punishment.
They should be punished because then there's all kinds of other problems that happen, and they will never come and tell you anything. Yeah.
So, but be aware. Check the devices and know what sites they're on, know when they're on it, look at the timestamps. You can find a whole lot by going through a device's history, and just be aware. Okay, truth bomb. Why don't you give us our truth bomb for the day?
Okay, I'm going to say this truth bomb with the most sincere heart ever, because I'm concerned about our kids. I'm concerned about our youth.
Yes.
I'm concerned about the time in which we're living. COVID has opened up so many new doors for child abuse and child trafficking. We must keep ahead of this in order to prevent our children from being devoured. And on that note, Jimmy and I will leave you saying, we can do this. We must do this for our children.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron, and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.